Africa's optimist-in-chief, and Africa's global development evangelist. Thank you, Mr. President, for your moving speech. Maybe we will have the Supporting Development Revitalization as the new name of the SDR. And hopefully, all those responsible will see the vision in that renaming. Thank you, Mr. President, for your wonderful speech. May I invite now Her Excellency, Dr. Monique Nsanzabaganwa, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to deliver a statement representing the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency, Madam.
Your Excellency, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana and our African Union champion for gender and for champion for African Union financial institutions. Your Excellency, Philip Nyusi, President of the Republic of Mozambique, and our African Union champion for climate disaster risk management. Your Excellency, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Your Excellency, President Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros. Your Excellency, Tiemoko Meliet Kone, Vice President of Cote d'Ivoire, here representing President Alassane Ouattara. Right Honorable Prime Minister Edouard Ngirente, representing President Paul Kagame of the Republic of Rwanda. Your Excellency, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank Group, and my dear brother. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and an honor to add my voice on behalf of the African Union Commission to this important conversation, which takes place in an international context plagued by multiple security, health, and environment challenges. And here I bring to you greetings from the chairperson, Musa Faki Mahamat, who could not be here today due to ongoing extraordinary summits of the African Union currently taking place in Malabo. Your Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo, thank you to you and the people of the Republic of Ghana for the wonderful welcome and warm hospitality to ensure that these annual meetings of the AFDB are a success. And my sincere thanks also go to my dear brother, Dr. President Adesina, for the excellent coordination of what we expect will be robust discussions of the future of our beloved continent and for the just delivered moving speech. Before the surge of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, our continent's economic prospects, drawn from our latest Africa's Development Dynamics report, were on a positive track, recovering from COVID-19 devastating socio-economic shocks, with an expected 3.9% economic growth in 2022, however 1 percentage point lower than the global average of 4.9. It is now anticipated that macroeconomic fundamentals of our economies will further weaken, that more Africans will slide back into extreme poverty, and that gains we had made on the Sustainable Development Goals will further erode. Surely, Aspiration 6 of the African Union Agenda 2063, which speaks about an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children, is threatened. To combat this, prioritization of critical sectors such as agriculture, agro-industry, and services, to shifting from heavy reliance on exports of non-transformed commodities and imports of manufactured goods to a real industrial transformation process are needed. Producing food, medicines, and all the necessary products imported yearly will also allow us to make the most of the $110 billion in imports of food stuff and also $16 billion in imports of pharmaceutical products. Expanding access to better water and sanitation will go a long way in sustaining health and nutrition, thereby improving the quality of life of the people of Africa and their resilience to the growing disruption of climate change. Furthermore, strengthening the links between debt financing and growth returns for debt sustainability is of paramount importance. Debt should be used for financing the most productive projects that generate sufficient growth to pay for the debt in future. Your Excellencies, development finance is heavily constrained just when it is needed the most. And this is where facilities such as the African Development Fund are key. During the African Union Assembly held this February, our African heads of state and government, in their decision 817, called for, and I quote, a substantial 16th replenishment of the African Development Fund to enable it to meet the growing needs of the continent. And in this same decision, their Excellencies also called for, and I quote again, amendment of the agreement establishing the African Development Fund to enable it to seek resources in the financial market for the benefit of fragile African countries and states in transition, end of quote. Again, our F-15 Ministers of Finance, during the World Bank IMF spring meetings last month, re-emphasized this point in their communique, stating, and I quote, that they call for a substantial and transformative 16th ADF replenishment, and for the ADF to be allowed to go to the market to leverage its quality and raise additional resources to offer at affordable rates to Africa's low-income countries, in line with the decision of the African Union heads of state and government adopted in February 2022, end of quote. Surely ADF has accomplished a lot, and Africa needs it to do more, faster, and smarter. It has all the backing from the African leadership, who also commend it for its ranking among global top 2 international development institutions for its quality. This replenishment would be timely, as African Union and the African Development Bank are working to kickstart support to our agricultural sectors. And here, I must congratulate my brother, Dr. Adesina, and your team for the initiative and the recently held joint meeting of African Ministers of Agriculture and Ministers of Finance on the African Emergency Food Production Facility. We look forward to a fruitful harvest in the future as the African Union and the African Development Bank work hand in hand to support our farming communities. Your Excellencies, I wish you best as you continue to deliberate on the most optimal path forward for our continent. A peaceful, united, and prosperous Africa, which effectively plays its role in the political, security, and economic world order, constitutes an asset for humanity. I thank you for listening to me.
Well, don't be surprised that I'm using this to clean the microphone. I want to thank the health services of Ghana for sensitizing us on COVID and carrying out daily tests, and also want to thank Africa CDC for supporting the COVID protocols. Thank you very much for your work. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like now call on the police band for an interlude of music before His Excellency comes on stage. The police band. Thank you, Police Band, for such a wonderful rendition. And by the way, Madam Deputy Chairperson, thank you for your excellent speech. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the honor and privilege to invite His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, to deliver his opening address.
Your Excellencies, the Presidents of the Republics of Mozambique and Tanzania, Your Excellencies, the Vice President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, and the Prime Minister of the Government of the Republic of Rwanda, Deputy Chair of the AU Commission, the Ghanaian Minister for Finance, Ministers and Deputy Ministers of State from Ghana and other countries, the Governor and Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Chairperson and members of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank Group, President of the African Development Bank Group, the veteran former President of the African Development Bank Group, the Dean and members of the Diplomatic Corps, delegates, fellow Africans, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to Ghana and to the 57th African Development Bank and 48th African Development Fund annual general meetings. As we say in Ghana, and you've heard it already, Akwaba. You're amongst the people who pride themselves on their sense of hospitality. I hope by the end of your visit that you will agree with this claim. I'm particularly happy that I've been able to come to the opening ceremony of these meetings with my good friend, the highly respected progressive President of the Republic of Mozambique, His Excellency Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, whose state visit to Ghana has coincided with these meetings. It is good to see, too, the first female President of the Republic of Tanzania, Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, and other African leaders from Côte d'Ivoire, Rwanda, and the Central African Republic also present to lend their support to the work of the bank. They and all of you are very welcome to your second home of Ghana. I believe that the choice of Ghana to host the meetings has everything to do with the special place she holds as a beacon of stable democratic governance in Africa, as well as the proverbial warm hospitality of the Ghanaian people. Indeed, these meetings, being held at a critical period in history, when Africa, like the rest of the world, is dealing with the twin effects of COVID-19 and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, could not find a better venue than our vibrant capital city of Accra. I congratulate the African Development Fund, ADF, the concessional lending arm of the African Development Bank, on the celebration of its Golden Jubilee. To invest some $9 million, United States dollars, over the last 5 years, up from an initial $327 million in 1976, is nothing short of exemplary. Congratulations are very much in order. Permit me also to commend the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, for his extraordinary vision, passion, and leadership. The African Development Bank is now a globally reputable bank, maintaining, even in difficult times, its stellar AAA ratings, the only African financial institution with AAA global credit ratings. The African Development Bank was ranked by the prestigious Global Finance magazine as the best multilateral financial institution in the world in 2021. It is equally impressive that the African Development Fund was also ranked by the Center for Global Development in the US as the second best in the world amongst all concessional financing institutions, even ahead of the World Bank IDA and all the developed countries' 28 concessional financing institutions of the OECD countries. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second consecutive year I'm addressing the bank's annual meetings. I had the honor of doing so last year, albeit virtually. Our meetings today, which are being held in person here in Accra, represent a great relief following 2 years of unprecedented disruptions caused by COVID-19. In my address last year, I challenged us to prioritize 5 main issues. 1, work towards the debt action plan. 2, collaborate and work with the World Bank and the IMF on the debt service suspension initiative and the G20 common framework. 3, explore options for the strategic use of the special drawing rights SDRs to support Africa through the AFDB. 4, work with IFAD and other global institutions to promote the establishment of food security facility. And 5, promote the African Financial Stability Mechanism for greater financial market stability for Africa. As we speak, the case for adhering immediately to these suggestions is even more compelling. We're now confronted with the consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which are compounding the emerging socioeconomic vulnerabilities which have been heightened by COVID-19. Since February, prices of staple food commodities have surged dramatically. Africa faces a fertilizer shortage of some 2 million metric tons this year, estimated at $2 billion United States dollars, according to the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, potentially creating a productivity deficit of some 20 to 50% in agriculture. Rising food prices disproportionately affect African families, as food consumes some 40% of household incomes, compared to less than 20% in the advanced economies. Energy markets have been significantly volatile, with dire consequences for households and public finances. According to the IMF, a $5 per barrel increase in oil prices reduces global output by around 0.25%. But for non-oil exporting economies in Africa, that figure increases to 0.6%. As a result, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development has cut global growth prospects by 1%, and the World Economic Outlook, April 2022, predicts global growth will slow from 6.1% in 2021 to 3.6% in 2022, 0.8 percentage points lower than projected in January 2022. Amidst economic slowdown and rising cost of fuel and food, the cost of living is increasing. The immediate economic consequences, whether in the form of rising inflation, lower growth, increased inequality, and greater financial instability, are likely to permeate deeper as they coincide with weakened economic positions due to the pandemic and pre-existing and now elevated debt challenges. The debt challenges are compounding for us in Africa. In pursuit of policy autonomy, in the age of choice for economic transformation, our debt profile has changed markedly. According to UNECA, the debt to GDP ratio rose from 60% to an estimated 70.1% between 2019 and 2020, largely because of the COVID pandemic. 18 African economies have faced credit downgrades, even when all economies were suffering from fallouts from the pandemic last year. Amidst these challenges, we must be aware of our vulnerability to the monetary policy stance of the U.S. Federal Reserve and the risk of so-called taper tantrums as investors may exit our markets, further exacerbating the increasing cost of borrowing. At this moment, support for non-IMF program countries to alleviate the debt burden is limited. The initial facility designed to offer a respite to economies with elevated debt challenges, the Debt Service Suspension Initiative, DSSI, has expired since December 2021. Beyond the DSSI, the G20 Common Framework promised a comprehensive solution to the debt issue. To date, the few countries that took on the associated risk by applying have yet to receive the much-needed relief. We look forward to how the Resilience and Sustainability Trust, RST, which requires that countries be in an IMF program, will effectively serve the needs of our countries. In these trying times, the IMF 650 billion special drawing rights, approved in August 2021, was meant to be of significant relief. However, based on the allocation principles, economies on this continent got some 33 billion United States dollars, about 5%. Moreover, the promise to reallocate some 100 billion United States dollars of the SDR allocations to our economies, which was agreed to at the Paris Summit in 2019, has so far yielded about 36 billion United States dollars in pledges as of April 2022. The strategic decision to make the AFDB the delivery vehicle for these SDRs must be pursued and achieved. Leveraging the SDRs 4 times as AFDB does will significantly boost resources for Africa's transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, the combined effects of the debt situation, rising interest rates, and rising cost of living are resulting in severe macroeconomic and financial instability. What is clear is that the resulting damage cannot be cured so easily with the limited fiscal tools at our disposal and national policy adjustments. Therefore, I reiterate my call for an elevated role for Africa's premier bank, the AFDB. Only at this time, I respectfully ask for a sense of urgency due to our mutual enlightened awareness. As a AAA-rated financial institution with an active portfolio of some 61 billion United States dollars in more than 142,000 locations, the AFDB is in the position to drive sustained transformation in Africa. It is in this spirit that I'm happy to learn that the AFDB board has approved funding for the 1.5 billion Africa Emergency Food Production Plan to support countries to produce food rapidly while delivering climate-resilient agricultural technologies to 20 million farmers, and thus leveraging this facility over 8 times. I'm also encouraged to hear that the right noises are being made towards establishing an African financial stability mechanism to protect our economies from future shocks. The irony that we have a history riddled with economic shocks, but are the only continent in the world without financial buffers, has to be urgently remedied. I'm persuaded that the African Financial Stability Mechanism will provide such protective cover for our economies, thus enabling us to counter effects of future pandemics, amongst others. The confluence of rising challenges and expectations require that together we act with sustained conviction. Our support will be critical to building the Africa we want, as espoused by AU Agenda 2063 from today. In addition to the pressing food, fuel, and fiscal challenges, we still have to ensure that, 1, the remaining 85% of the continent's population are vaccinated against COVID-19. 2, the remaining 60% of health facilities on the continent are connected to a reliable source of electricity. 3, the teeming youth, who are over 60% of our population, are better educated and equipped for the job market, i.e., to become a digitally enabled entrepreneurial generation. 4, the African Continental Free Trade Area transforms Africa with a combined GDP of 3.3 trillion United States dollars. 5, the fiscal and digital infrastructural deficits are addressed. And 6, the unrelenting insecurity and violence, creating about 2.5 million internally displaced people in the Sahel and elsewhere, are permanently addressed. The stakes could not be higher and clearer. To move towards resolving these, we must support the bank to do what a bank does, to mobilize and invest funds. We must activate a process that moves this bank from the corridors of billions to trillions, given the scale of the challenges on this continent. Ultimately, the AfDB must become the dominant financing institution for African transformation in the medium term. This means we must bridge and overhaul the financing gap that exists with other complementary institutions. For instance, the financing gap between the IDA, the concessionary arm of the World Bank in Africa, and ADF now stands at almost fivefold. That is 15 billion United States dollars compared to the ADF's 3 billion United States dollars per year. It is now time to A, ease the regulations that shackles the bank from optimizing its resources. Amending the articles that precludes the ADF from entering the market to leverage its resources must be first-order priority. In July last year, the IDA of World Bank, the equivalent of ADF, priced a 10-year sustainable development bond that raised 2 billion euros. Subsequently, IDA's funding program expanded from US 5 billion United States dollars in 2020 to 10 billion United States dollars in 2021. Such is the demonstrated power of the market beckoning the ADF. With an ADF equity of 26 billion United States dollars, the prospects could be an additional 8 to 10 billion United States dollars, which could drive sustained transformation, especially for both fragile and states in transition on this continent. B, consider carefully consolidating the balance sheets of both the ADB and ADF to enable raise more resources. There are financial efficiency, policy, and administrative gains inherent to having a single entity with a consolidated balance sheet and harmonized fundraising and governance processes. Overlapping clients and majority of our countries requiring concessional access would enable this consolidation to be beneficial. C, sustained efforts to leverage private investments into Africa. The OECD suggests that the 2.5 trillion United States dollars financing gap for the SDGs could balloon to 4.2 trillion United States dollars. It points out that this gap could be filled by realigning just 1.1% of the 379 trillion United States dollars in global financial assets under management. AFDB must lead in crowding in these resources. And D, demonstrate foremost interest in the proposal by the AU to explore the issuance of security indexed investment bonds to raise funds to address the root causes of increasing insecurity and poverty. With increased financial resources, the bank could recapitalize key African financial institutions such as the regional development banks, Afri-Exim Bank, Africa Guarantee Fund, Africa Reinsurance Company, and Africa 50. This will harness the collective institutional strengths of Africa for sustained transformation and will thus avoid the situation whereby, for example, the IMF, as of the end of 2021, was able to lend 41 billion United States dollars to Argentina with a population of 45 million people, compared to 34 billion United States dollars for the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, with a population of 1.14 billion people. Empowering these African institutions and engaging communities will be vital to addressing the socio-ecological challenge of our time, climate change. Beyond pursuing ecological restoration, the AFDB should foster a culture of proactive and risk-based approaches, away from current reactive and crisis-based practices. This should involve effective coordination, communication, and cooperation, driven by adequate finance and political will. And as the AU champion for financial institutions in Africa, I pledge my support in this regard. Given our peculiar energy challenges, the bank should engage actively the discourse on shifting to a more sustainable economic model without making African communities and nations worse off. The cost of climate to our common humanity keeps increasing, with our continent bearing a disproportionate burden, though we have caused the least emissions of 3.8%, with the Western nations being responsible for 76%. Yet, only 6 billion United States dollars out of the worldwide total of 30 billion United States dollars of climate adaptation finance flows to Africa, even though the United Nations Environment Program has projected that between 75 million and 250 million people would be affected by climate-induced water stress. Not to mention, financing COP26 compliance could potentially strand Africa's natural resources, including natural gas. How do we develop under such unfair circumstances? The bank must empower Africa to seek justice in the journey to clean energy in a manner that optimizes the exploitation of our abundant natural resources. The design and focus of a just energy transition facility are timely, as they offer material support for powering and lighting up Africa and still meet the targets of climate. We must light up and power Africa to enable her feed herself, integrate, and industrialize. We must ensure that our prioritized climate actions are consistent with our current challenges and aspirations as a continent. This will be a demonstration of the theme chosen for these annual meetings. We must avoid our natural resources being stranded in the upcoming negotiations in Egypt at COP27. The stronger bonds between economy, ecology, and conflicts demand that a bold and holistic approach be taken. It is in that light that I consider the theme of these annual meetings both timely and appropriate. At the end of these meetings, Africa expects a framework that reconciles people and planet for peace. We cannot fail the people and the planet. Both must win. But for this to happen, Africa must win. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to move towards an economic model which serves our interests, not others. Profits from our resources have benefited foreign creditors for far too long, while we suffer abusive borrowing costs on the international capital markets. There is no basis for our economies being saddled with the so-called African risk premium, which translates into higher spreads than for our European and American counterparts, particularly when our resources were the catalyst for the economic advancement of Western nations. It is time we work to address and remove the structural barriers to our development. And we must also deal with tax dodging and illegitimate commercial transactions by multinationals, which account for 60% of the $88 billion United States dollars of illicit financial outflows from the continent annually, and other relationships which inhibit our development. I am comforted by the array of expertise available to us. Now more than ever, it has become urgent to take the necessary steps to transition us towards become a resilient continent. Africa must exploit her productive capacities collectively and build the capacity of her continental development banks in order to realize the Africa we want and an Africa beyond aid. Accordingly, ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor to declare the annual general meetings of the African Development Bank Group here in Accra duly open. I wish you a very fruitful meeting, and may God bless the African Development Bank Group, Mother Africa, and us all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, for such a wonderful speech. And of course, we know you as the advocate for Africa without aid. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with that inspiring address from His Excellency, we have come to the end of the opening ceremony. We will now transition to the presidential dialogue, which will now be just one panel and not two, because time is fast spent. Before we go to the panel, we ask you to remain seated for the heads of states to reconvene, but for now, they will retire to the VIP room in preparation for the panel. However, let's make the following announcements. There will be a family photo after the presidential dialogue for the following personalities: Excellencies, heads of state and government, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, honorable governors of the bank group, and special guests. And then the photo will be followed by a high-level luncheon by invitation at the small arena. We're hoping to get this accomplished to be able to meet the time for the remaining programs of the annual meetings. I now invite His Excellencies, the Excellencies, to please transition to the VIP room while we prepare to move into. Thank you very much.
Wa TBC1 unachokitazama sasa ni matangazo mbashara moja kwa moja kutoka katika mji mkuu wa Ghana, Accra, ambapo viongozi mbalimbali wa bara la Afrika wakiwemo wadau mbalimbali wa masuala mtambuka wanashiriki mkutano wa mwaka wa Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika huko Accra, Ghana, ambapo sasa ni kipindi cha mapumziko. Viongozi wa mataifa hayo wanakwenda kushiriki mkutano wa majadiliano ya pamoja utakaohusiana na masuala mbalimbali ikiwemo mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Miongoni mwa viongozi hao ni Rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, Mheshimiwa Samia Suluhu Hassan, lakini pia yupo rais mwenyeji Nana Akufo-Addo wa Ghana, kuna rais wa Msumbiji Felipe Nyusi, miongoni mwa wengine na wawakilishi wengine mbalimbali ambao wamehudhuria katika mkutano huo muhimu wa mwaka. Sasa tusikilize ama tutazame makala hii.
Kubwa sana. Kwa hiyo sisi kama kampuni tulikuwa tunapata changamoto hasa kuhudumia wateja wote, ikiwa na maana wakulima. Kwa hiyo tulikuwa tukipita kwenye taasisi za kifedha kama benki, kwa ajili ya kutaka mikopo na kadhalika, lakini kidogo imekuwa changamoto kwa sababu mikopo benki inahitaji dhamana, lakini pia gharama interest kwenye mikopo riba ni kubwa. Kwa hiyo sisi kama kampuni tulikuwa tunapata changamoto sasa kuwa na uwezo mkubwa wa kupata hizi mbolea na kuwapatia wakulima. Kwa hiyo kidogo hali ilikuwa iko ngumu, lakini baada ya kuja kwa mradi huu hasa tuseme tumenufaika sana. Tumenufaika kwa sababu sasa yale makampuni ambayo yanasambaza mbolea yameendelea kutuamini zaidi na kuendelea kutupa mzigo zaidi ambao na sisi unatusaidia sasa kufikisha hizi mbolea kwa wakulima kwa kiasi ambacho wanakihitaji. Mimi kama manager wa kampuni ya Mtele General Traders nilipata nafasi ya kuiwakilisha kampuni kwenye mafunzo ya usimamizi wa biashara. Niseme yalikuwa mafunzo ambayo yametusaidia sana kwa sababu pale tulijifunza namna mbalimbali ya usimamizi wa biashara, utunzaji wa kumbukumbu, pamoja na utunzaji wa taarifa mbalimbali zinazohusiana na biashara zetu, ni namna gani tunaweza kutengeneza faida na vitu kama hivyo. Kwa hiyo niseme ni mafunzo ambayo yalikuwa ni mazuri sana na yamesaidia pakubwa sana kwenye kampuni yetu, na labda nishauri kwamba mafunzo ya namna ile yawe endelevu, yawe yanafanyika mara kwa mara, kwa sababu wafanyabiashara wanabadilika, kampuni za agrodealers wanabadilika, wafanyakazi kwenye makampuni wanabadilika. Kwa hiyo kuwe na kama refreshers training ambazo zitasaidia zaidi kwa hawa agrodealers kufanya biashara zao vizuri zaidi.
Flooding and drought and COVID-19 related lockdowns are setting back our goal to feed Africa. Yet, in Ghana's northern region, an agricultural technologies program is defying these challenges.
If it was just for my efforts and capacity, I would have still maintained on my small-scale farming.
Jamila and other farmers collectively increased their plantable land by more than 9,000% in just 3 years. Ghana's success is part of the African Development Bank's technology.
Naam, hizo ni makala mbalimbali zinazoendelea kupita katika mkutano huo zenye kuelezea mafanikio ambayo yamefadhiliwa na Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika. Makala mojawapo ilikuwa inatoka Tanzania na masuala yanayohusiana na kilimo. Tunajua benki hii imekuwa ikifanya mengi katika katika maendeleo ya Afrika, kwenye miundombinu, kwenye kilimo chenyewe na mambo mengi mbalimbali, na hata mwaka huu bodi ya wakurugenzi ilivia kutoa kiasi ya shilingi dola bilioni 1.5 kwa ajili ya kuwasaidia zaidi ya wakulima milioni 20 kote barani Afrika kuzalisha zaidi ya tani za ujazo milioni 38 ili kukabiliana na janga la njaa ambalo linayokumba dunia kutokana na vita ya Urusi na Ukraine. Tutarudi baadaye tupate mapumziko mafupi. Kama walivyopata mapumziko, tutakuja na tunafahamu kwamba leo Rais Samia Suluhu Hassan ndiye mshindi wa mwaka huu wa tuzo ile ya Bakari Ndiaye ya ujenzi wa barabara barani Afrika. Mwaka jana alikuwepo, aliyeshinda tuzo hii ni Rais Muhammadu Buhari wa Nigeria, na mwaka 2020 alikuwa Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Kwa hiyo mwaka huu imeangukia Tanzania. Tukirudi tutakuja kuambia kwa nini imekuwa kwa Rais Samia Suluhu Hassan kutokana na juhudi zake katika masuala ya ujenzi wa barabara. Vigezo, akina nani wamepitisha hivyo vigezo mpaka yeye kuwa sehemu hiyo ya ushindi wa mwaka huu. Wameenda mapumziko viongozi, wakirudi na sisi tutarudi pamoja na uendelea kusalia na TBC1. katika matangazo mengine yanayofuata.
Kiongozi mkuu wa mapinduzi, bali pia ni mwalimu na baba mwenye kipaji cha ukarimu, na kuna siyefahamu kwamba yeye ni kiongozi halisi.
Kwa hiyo tukakubaliana kwamba maendeleo hayana budi yawe yana uhusiano na maisha ya watu. Hayana budi uyapime yamefanya nini kwa watu. Zile pesa hamkuzipata kwa kunyonya watu au kwa kuuza bangi. Mnazitumiaje katika kuleta maendeleo ya watu? Kwa hiyo msingi wa kwanza tunausema pale ni juu ya development has to be people centered. To be meaningful, development must be people centered. Kama sio people centered, it's not development ya kweli. Ni maneno tunaweza kusema tu. Sasa tukasema kama ni people centered, basi lazima haiwezi kataja tu kwamba wanashiba sana. Kushiba ni kitu kizuri au wanavaa vizuri. Lazima tutaje mambo mengi tu. Tutaje elimu yao, tutaje afya yao, tutaje huko kuvaa kwao na usafiri wao, lakini tutaje culture yao vile vile, utamaduni wao, wanaishije katika utamaduni wao. Tutaje vile vile na mambo ya uhuru wao, democracy. Kama kuna maendeleo kweli, kuna kwamba watu wana